nanorobots for cancer therapeutics. It was actually for a school
Literally
project.
try to solve cancer as a side
No,
project.
no, no.
That's crazy.
It was not trying to solve. Compared to a lot of other people who put in a lot of time, systematic, I
Just doing
definitely
it, yeah.
was not that kind of person. And it showed. I was perpetually stuck at a 39, you know?
Yeah.
Don't ask high performers for their advice if they've always been high performers, you know?
Okay. This is episode something, 5 or
Okay.
6, I think.
That's it. Damn, bro.
yeah.
Early on boarder.
Huh?
I'm early here.
Not
Yeah.
really, bro. We're in like the middle of the thing, bro.
Yeah.
But
okay.
yeah, who is Harihar?
So, Harihar is me, and since obviously I have to establish status, credentials all from the start, that's why you guys are here, you know.
Just to suck, like-
yeah. My name's Harihar. I committed to JHU for computer science, and asked you who is Harihar. I thought about this a lot for the essays, and that was definitely very
Big man, yeah.
tailored to the colleges. But I like building things, bro. I like building things. I'm not super technical. I wish I was. I'm not an Olympiad kid. I'm kind of I like building things. I wouldn't say I'm not technical either. I was kind of lost actually from ICSE to IB. So I had to do a lot of catching up on the extracurricular side. I would say I'm somebody who doesn't like the academic system that much, but thankfully I'm able to kind of optimize for the minimum amount of effort for maximum amount of results, which IB is also really conducive to, because since it's kind of grade
Conducive,
boundary,
oh my
yeah,
God.
since it's grade boundary based, you don't have to get 100. You know,
Yeah.
if you get an 81% and the grade boundary for a 7 is 80%, it's still a 7,
Yeah.
right? So I like to build, I like to read, I like to think a lot, and in the future I want to start and run my own deep tech startup.
Deep tech. Okay,
Yeah.
very cool. I think that's the most comprehensive like intro we've gotten till now.
Okay, that's good to hear.
But yeah, I think let's go one by one, right?
Yeah, sure.
Where does this love of building, as you put it, come from? And can you kind of define what building,
Building
means
is
to
to
you?
me? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, actually, what it was to me is the fact that a lot of the majority of traditional paths that we take nowadays, it's not net positive, it's not net negative, it's just you contribute almost nothing. You know, if I am building, for example, CRM software for a Pani Puri stand, that's like, first of all, nobody wants a Pani Puri stand. And I'm like a second order removed from that, where the things that I work on have even less impact in the long run. So when it comes to building, I would say I want to make the biggest impact possible. And the closest you
You see
can
building
get
as a
to
way
the
to do
root
that,
of
okay.
that itself is having the ability and the desire and the vision to actually solve problems. And the best way to do that at a big scale is by building products, right? Services only scale so far. And as to what building means for me, definitely it's a lot in the traditional sense, in the technical sense, that I want to learn about how things work at the deepest, most fundamental level. And obviously my field of choice is pretty cliche, it's
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. But the thing is that more than that, the thing that I think really elevates that is when you combine that with the way we interface with that technology itself. So to me, fundamentally, at a first principles basis, it's just the ability to have a problem and have the skill set to solve it. But at a higher level, what really draws me to it is the fact that it's a first order, as in like it's the closest way you can improve quality of life for many people at a massive scale.
Okay.
So-
and when did you kind of like, this is like a pretty elaborate kind of thought process,
Yeah.
right? Around when do you think you came to this conclusion? Like,
Yeah, so it's a funny story actually.
Yeah.
It was, so I've read about this a lot, and if some people say that for some people they just have like an all-purpose ambition and the kind of details kind of find their way later on, right? And for other people they have a really deep passion for one thing, and after getting good at that, the ambition kind of blooms from that. So I would definitely say I'm the former. As a kid, I used to do a lot of fantasy. There's this Chinese genre called wuxia, and that really kind of pilled me into thinking about Oh, the underdog, you know? I'm the one that's
The
there for
anime.
me. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
It's not really anime, it was just a lot of
Did
fantasy.
I offend you there, bro?
Yeah, so it's kind of called wuxia. Has a lot of power scaling, a lot of focus on purpose and what you do as a person and honor and stuff like that. So those were the principles that were enshrined in me kind of subconsciously because I used to read that stuff from 6th grade. And over time I began to think about, okay, that idea is good and all, you know, but that is in fantasy. You know, this is the real world here. How are you going to do something with those grand visions if you don't have any skills, if you don't have any vision, if you don't know what you want to do? So from that kind of general ambition, the question was, how can I make the greatest impact on the world? And definitely that, to me, that was where the answer came from, finding a problem and building something to solve for it, right? So yeah, that's where it came from. So for me, it was kind of high level to lower level kind of transition, where I went from being hyper ambitious to actually finding something to do that would kind of satisfy my urge. I mean, obviously, there's a bit of narcissism in there, but also to engage in the kind of meaningful work that I want to do.
Okay. And I think you've mentioned even like I obviously know you like outside of
Yeah.
here and all. Do you feel like your habit of reading? I think before we get into all the college application cliche
Yeah.
stuff, right? Just getting to know you and your processes a little better. Do you think the habit of reading is like a major thing for why you're here today? Like, because
I
I've
would
seen you
say-
recommend that to a lot of
Yeah, 100%. It's not even. The way I look at it is that there's only so much data that you can get from the world. And a lot of what consists of taking that data and building reliable processes, it's kind of distilling learnings and systems from the data that you get from perception, right? And what books do is that it allows you to skip the entire process of gathering data, formulating systems, kind of particularizing from a general, and it just gives you the sweet final product on a silver platter. And another thing that I would say is not only reading and getting these kind of learning injected into your nerves, it's also what you choose to read, right? So another thing that I think is very true about the world right now is that for most people, to an extent, they want to do the best they can, right? And so what becomes really important is no longer your desire, but the amount of information that you're exposed to. So when you're reading, you actually have access and arbitrage to a much larger domain of knowledge and possibility. So it also alters your thinking in a way that's more fundamental, right? Your entire problem space expands to a much larger area that you can think in. So I started reading a lot of fantasy. So that was just get something that's easy to read to inculcate the habit. After that, I moved on to the self-help nonfiction. Like Atomic Habits was a really popular one. That was a good one. But after that,
I think it's pretty cliche though.
Yeah, fell flat. And after that, I really started reading actually deep philosophy, like Nietzsche, Schopenhauer.
Oh, you started there. Did you not go back to the classics? Like the
Classics as in Shakespeare.
No, Greek.
Greek, no, I didn't. I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, but that was also, it was kind of hard for me to digest.
Valid.
And then, actually, more than that, I started reading technical books. You know, it actually just reads like a research paper or something along those lines. And I think the most impactful books I've read have actually been not about a specific domain. You know, it's just been about human-centered perception and cognition. For example.
What is that?
Yeah, so for example, I read this book recently, I just finished it, okay? It's called Surfing Uncertainty, and it outlines a cognitive model of the mind. It's called the predictive processing model, okay? Real short, when you think about the way you perceive the world, you might think of it as feature detection, right? Okay, look at that, there's a phone there that's recording me, there's an edge that the light plays off, it hits my retina, and that kind of pings with an internal model of the mind. But what the predictive processing model says is that it's not only bottom up. Your brain actually produces a hypothesis of what the world looks like. And all the sensory data that's coming from below actually only serves as prediction error. So I'm used to this. Okay, this is actually a prediction error signal that comes up, and my brain says, hey, so when I look at your face, I'm weighting the prediction error that kind of level, from the very level of your
Yeah,
cognition.
I understood everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps you get a grip on.
Okay. Very cool. I think I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro.
Okay.
Okay, just
It's
more.
a little bit of an overload. But okay, I think let's now take it back
Yeah.
to the basics, right? I know 9 and 10, Harihar, Vibgya, right? ICSE
ICSE.
school. From there, was it always the intention to go international with your UG, or was that something that evolved after that?
Yeah, so the way it worked was that my parents asked me around 8th grade, where do you want to study, right? And I was fortunate enough that they had the finances to even ask me that question. So I told them I want to go to the US, because
The cliche,
even at that
yeah.
age, I got American dream.
Yeah.
It came, it's there underneath my psyche, right? And then that was their first time figuring this out as well, right? So 9th and 10th, I stayed in ICSE because I've been in Vibgyor from a very young age. And they thought that, okay, he might get a chance to the student council and stuff. And that also ended up happening. And what ended up happening after that was that 11th and 12th, my mom had a friend whose daughter also went to IB from ICSE. And she said, okay, anyway, Harihar wants to go abroad, so we'll put him into an IB school. And this friend also, her daughter also went to Greenwood. So I ended up writing the entrance test to Greenwood and I got it. So it's kind of like, oh, Sharma ji ki beti did this,
Yeah,
so
okay.
you might as well
Was she
do
like
it
an
as well.
overachiever?
No, she was just my mom was very good friends with her
Okay.
mom. It was just purely on a camaraderie basis. It wasn't because that person was a grinder or anything
Okay.
like that.
Okay, but so were you like consciously like preparing or something like that from 9 and 10, or was it like shit? Okay, now I got to do it in 11th.
Yeah, so for me, 9th and 10th, actually, I was a frog in a very small pond.
It was a much smaller school.
Yeah, not smaller. As in, I
Or
mean,
like
I
less,
don't want to.
aspirational kind of like with the
I
applicant.
wouldn't. I don't want to say it like that. All of them, people of them had different goals,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
All of them were preparing for competitive examinations.
Yeah.
So the bar, extracurricular wise, was pretty low, and even application wise, my academics were never bad, but the highlight was always extracurriculars. And that way, I was president of the student council. I was doing MUN. I was like working on the side for a charity, and I was gonna start my own and stuff like that. And to me, in that context, I thought that was really great, right? But the thing is that consciously, since I was in a position of unconscious superiority, I didn't really think, okay, I need to lock in, I gotta do all of these things. That really only hit when I came to Greenwood and I saw the cracked stuff kids were doing there. So definitely preparation, not so much 9th and 10th. I really slogged 11th and 12th EC wise to get where I am today.
Okay. I know that Vibgya is ICSE, right? Before we get to, I know like the ECA is kind of where your heart lies. But what was like the academic change from, I think ICSE and IB even, when I
Yeah.
switched, even though it was a little earlier, it is definitely a difference in approach to how you go about studying, right?
Yeah.
How was that change for you going from, switching between these systems basically?
So it was actually very nice, actually, because I feel like as a person, I also click with the IB way of studying more, where it's a lot more concept based, where compared to ICSE, I needed to just, especially for history, geography, and things like that, I need to memorize a lot of formulas, a lot of factoids. But what I would say is that the raw kind of memory based horsepower you get from ICSE, from mugging up that much information, transfers really well into IB if you have that conceptual streak. Because what ended up happening to me was that a lot of times in IB, I used to stay up the night before the exam, just mug up everything, and because my short-term memory was trained from having to spend a lot of time memorizing things in ICSE, the retention that I had in that kind of
Much
8-hour
better
time
than
span
IBS,
was really, really good. And I would say that also gave me a competitive edge over my peers in terms of the amount of preparation I needed to do just as well. So I would definitely say it worked out well for me, because I had that conceptual streak, that understanding streak naturally, and then ICC kind of drilled that memory horsepower into me, and that combined with my inclination towards understanding made IB a little bit easier in the way I approached it as well. But I would say this, again, it doesn't apply to all people.
Yeah, it's a very subjective thing,
Yeah, right? So is another thing I'm not going to go into the details, okay? I've been hearing about this, I've been reading about this. It's basically like the advice that most people need it doesn't get to them. You know, for example, if I am a rationalist, I am subscribed to all these newsletters, right? They're all rationalist newsletters. So all the advice I'll be getting is, okay, be more logical, be more first principles, be more grand thinking. But actually, for me, the correct advice might be in the
To be a
other
little bit
direction.
more-
You know,
more creative
be a
and-
little bit more emotional.
Yeah.
Understand why people work the way they do. But the thing is that you self-select into environments where the advice that you're getting is what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So that way, I would say if you're somebody who thinks, okay, I'm really good at memory-based learning, coming to IB might be a bit of a shock for you. And that's the same way, if you have a natural inclination towards memory-based learning, then maybe shifting to IB earlier would be better for you, because then you're getting information that goes against your natural inclination. That's like, okay, actually understand. Don't vomit out formulas onto the paper. But if you're naturally more concept-based and understanding-based, I would recommend, okay, maybe work on your memory for a bit.
So, I know that Greenwood, at least as a school, is pretty academically rigorous, right? Let alone the fact that, I mean, the IB itself is demanding, right? It's not a piece of cake.
Yeah.
So, what was prep like for you? And I mean, I think we'll get to the kind of time management part of it later. But just what was Harihar's academic process like? From step 1 to whatever Z. What was it like?
To be honest, I am probably not the right person to ask about this, because a lot of this was just spray and pray, and I really banged a lot on my natural aptitude for some of these things and my short-term memory, compared to a lot of other people who put in a lot of time, systematic processes. I
Just
definitely was not that kind of person, and it showed. Okay, those people, they've gotten 41s, they've gotten 42s. I was perpetually stuck at a 39, you know?
40, yeah.
And if I wasn't naturally good at a subject, for example, math, I never got a 7. In all my years in IB, I've always been stuck at a 6. So it was a bad thing for me. I was never able to put in the effort, because some things always came that naturally to me to work my way to a 7. So your process was just 3 days before the exam, wake up and just hit
do
the
a
books,
small puja
bro.
before you go.
Yeah,
That's it.
you know,
Okay.
that's it, bro. So that's why I always say, if you don't ask high performers for their advice if they've always been high performers, you know, if you want to actually get good advice, ask somebody who didn't have that skill
and then had to
get it from scratch.
Because their processes are probably going to be more systematic.
Yeah, it's more
rather than
applicable
like-
for
yeah.
everybody else.
Okay.
You know?
For sure. I think now we'll switch it up. I think we'll talk about what you've been kind of itching to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? What was the EC slog like? I know you said your kind of information pool really opened up when you came to Greenwood.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually, for ECs, that's almost the definitive factor, right? It's
100%.
just how much do you know, because there's so much to do out there.
Yeah.
But simple Google search sometimes just doesn't get it done, right? It's like you have to know people that are doing things. But yeah, I mean, with all that, when you did kind of get access to this, okay, so many people are doing this stuff, what was the switch like? And okay, at least was there any process, and like how did you map out, okay, I have this time left, this is what I'm going to do, all of that? Because I know you were pretty systematic with that, at least.
Yeah. So thank you for giving me a topic that I can actually provide
Yeah.
useful information about. So when I came to IB, I actually it was all school level or maximum district level EC. So I had Model United Nations, I had football, I had president of the student council,
So all the-
and all the typical you know, high achiever ECs. And then I just started like a non-profit where I was
Just
getting
casually.
food. Yeah, I was getting
Okay.
leftover food from restaurants and giving that to people in need.
Okay.
So that also went on to be my number one EC, my defining EC, what I spent most of my time on. But when I came into IB, what I learned was that a lot of people were doing research. And this was super new for me.
Yeah.
I actually had no idea
That you
you
could
could
actually
do
do that,
research
right?
in
Yeah.
high school. And a lot of them also had aspirations to go into academia as a career. So that was super, it was a lot of whiplash for me. And what I did was, one of my best friends, Rishikesh, right? You had him on the podcast. The episode's coming out soon. He did something called Pioneer over the summer, which was a research program.
Yeah.
And that, I was like, okay, that sounds cool. I want to do that. So I applied, and obviously you have to pay quite a bit out of pocket. And again, economic class also provides a kind of inbuilt filter for that. So again, I was very fortunate in that I had the access to the opportunity and I had the capital to
go do
engage in
that,
those
yeah.
things, right? So what happened was that I came in and I floundered for a bit. And then I went through a really intensive information gathering phase where I looked at, okay, what are the typical high achieving ECs? What do they look for? What can I do? What is achievable within my skill set? So I came into IB in August of 2023. Okay. Then I learned about Pioneer, I learned about research, then I learned about internships. I actually hadn't done an internship up until then. I learned about Olympiads. That's where that also I'll get to that. That's also something I dabbled in. Then I learned about awards. I actually had my award section was super minimal before that. So the way I mapped it out was that I had from August 2023 to October 2024 in my mind. That's what I had because November the application goes out. But in reality, you only have until about the summer
September
vacation
or
or
October,
August or September of 2024 because after that, you have to spend a lot of time working on your essays as well. So the way I mapped it out was that I decided to do USICO, which was a USA Computing Olympiad. So USICO had sessions running on December, January, February, and March. So September, I found out about this. Okay, September to December, I prepped primarily for USICO, and I started scaling up my other non-profit on the side as well. It's called True Circle. Then I wrote it in December, and the way it works is that you start off at bronze, you can go to silver, you can go to gold, you can go to platinum, and then you camp if you're a USA citizen. But the thing is that I knew I wasn't going to make platinum. My goal was I wanted to make gold, okay? So December I wrote it and I made silver, okay? Then January I wrote, I didn't make gold. February I wrote, I didn't make gold. And then March I finally wrote and I made USICO gold, okay? Then that was my USICO timeline. After March, I finished USICO. And parallelly with that, I was working on True Circle as well. And sometime along that, I actually had a contact from one of the monks that I went to. He ran another non-profit called Inspire India, and they were based out of Mumbai. So I asked, hey, I have all the processes and all the contracts that I have made for True Circle ready. And if I gave you that system, would you be able to kind of set up a branch in Mumbai as well? And they're like, sure, we can do that. Because for them also, partnering was also something they were looking at because that was also the growth stage. So connections also definitely play a really big role in that sense. So True Circle was scaling up parallelly along with all of this. And then in February, actually, so December I applied for Pioneer. And I got into Pioneer and I started doing some research as well. Then what ended up happening was that I had my first research experience. So I decided, okay, Pioneer is not going to cut it if I wanted to be a top tier EC because it's a paid research program. And that by definition is a mark against your portfolio. You want to see something that actually only depends on, or at least it looks like it depends on skill itself. So I started cold emailing professors for research internships. And since I was an Indian citizen, I couldn't move to the US. So I was looking for remote positions and stuff. So that was another system that I kind of refined with an automation framework. I used Selenium, which is like a Java browser automation framework, where I had an Excel sheet with a bunch of emails and I just customized it at a very minimal level. I would not recommend this. If you're sending cold emails, look at people who you want to really work with, because at that point in the game, I was really cloud chasing. I was status maxing, I was prestige maxing. And that led me to take some questionable decisions, but it worked out in the end. So in the end, through a contact, I emailed a Harvard professor. And he was like working with the Department of Statistics. And he said, yeah, sure, I can meet up with you every now and then. And I'm open to working with you on a research paper as well. So that was around February. Then actually that got put on hold for a while I started working on Pioneer. And in March, I actually finished all my IAs for IB and I also started on my Math EE. So it was actually super packed at that point in time. Then my summer, I finished Pioneer. I started working on the paper with that Harvard professor. And I also got an internship so this is obviously nepotism, right? My dad works at Philips. And obviously, I hate to say it, but if you have the leverage, do use it, and just because other people are doing it doesn't justify you doing it. But the thing is that as long as you're doing actual work I don't think it's so much of a bad thing to kind of get your foot in the door through first
that you
order
know.
contacts, right? So I worked over there. I worked on like a computer vision algorithm to optimize the quality screening process because they were literally just playing friends for like 24/7 for 2-3 weeks, and they were checking if there were any glitches on the screen. And the thing is that if you're a human being just sitting there and looking at that, it's a major waste of time. And it wasn't that hard to do. You know, it's just that you get a data set, you train a model. Okay, if you see the screen, log the report and take a video of that clip and keep it there. So yeah, I definitely learned a lot of technical stuff from that internship. So at that point in time, what I had was that I had True Circle. They scaled up to 2 cities, like I think 50,000 meals distributed at that time. Then you had the research internship with the Harvard professor. You had Pioneer. You had the Phillips internship. And then in 10th grade in ICSE, I actually dabbled a bit in the agency space. So I set up a client acquisition agency for clients in the flooring space. So what I did was that I reached out to people in the flooring industry and I said, hey, I can set up a landing page, I can set up funnels, I didn't do UGC, which is like user generated content back then, but I basically just did FB ads, IG ads, and I set up kind of follow-up messages using Go High Level and stuff like that. So over there, I actually backed 3 contracts at pretty high ticket rates. So I scaled it to around $5,000 a month. But then coming into Greenwood, I actually knew I couldn't manage both that and academics and all the other ECs, so I shut it down after that summer vacation. So that was another EC. And then I had Greenwood High MUN, so I was MUN prefect for that. Then president of student council, and then a summer at Vibgyor, then a summer program, and then 2 more. It's like not that high impact, just to fill up the slots. And award-wise, I had USACO Gold. I participated in something called Rise, so I put to the application for that January 2024. So the first half of 2024, I was slogging, and the repercussions came in the second half where I was super burnt out when it came to essay writing. So, but it was a good experience, it let me understand, okay, my limits are here. If you want to cross it, do so with caution. So awards-wise, I had USACO Gold. I was top 500 internationally for Rise. So just before the final cutoff of 100 people, I kind of failed. And then I had HMUN had something called an impact initiative. So I was the top 3 in popular vote and top 5 nationally out of like I think 200 teams in that. And then after that, I wrote like a review paper on what was it called, like nanorobots for cancer therapeutics. It was actually for a school
Literally
project.
trying to solve cancer as a side project.
No.
That's crazy.
It was not trying to solve. Yeah, so that was my application.
That's all.
Yeah. Some advice I would give you is that you really need to know how to use the additional information section in the Common App really, really well. Because in that 650 words, I fit in so much. All the external outgoing links to my website, to Google folders with evidence, to additional side projects, all of that. The admissions officers probably won't read it, but it's good to just keep it in there, So I used up all 650 words of my additional information, and the formatting also, it was like bold where you need to make sure you check the sample formatting before you send in the Common App, stuff like that. So EC wise, that was everything I did. And since I spent so much time on ECs, my academics were, as you saw before, they didn't really suffer.
But not where you wanted to be.
They were not, for example, everybody else was getting like 41s, not everybody, like all the people I was competing with were getting 41s, 42s. I was perpetually stuck at a 39. So, yeah, you win some, you lose some,
That's sick though. But, okay, now like time management, right? I know you basically belted it for those 2 years.
Yeah.
What were your systems to kind of say, to do so much in such a short time?
Yeah.
And how did you kind of manage that with, I don't know about you, but I think everybody has, I don't think that it's possible to be like entirely no social life, entirely no just sit and I think you're going to burn out in like a week.
100%.
Right? So, how did you balance like, I wouldn't call it work-life balance, but like at least work-life, some sort of equilibrium?
Yeah, so for me, what was working in my favor was that naturally, since I did MUN, and even as a kid, I was a super hyper kid, I was pretty extroverted, right? So I had a really good bunch of friends around me that were in the same grind, they were in the trenches with me. So that's what I really understood, that the peer group is super important, dude. I can't stress this enough. So many opportunities I got to know only because somebody
Your
else was
friends,
doing it, right? I got to know about Pioneer through Rishikesh. I got to know about Yusuko because somebody offhandedly mentioned a biology Olympiad. So a lot of these things, you're actually preempting future opportunities if you have a friend group that's actually filtering for the same criteria that you look for. For example, if I am looking for extracurriculars, right, and all of my friends are doing the same thing, they're gonna filter out all the noise in their environment. They're gonna tell me, "Hey, have you checked out this thing? Have you checked out
The
that
important
thing?"
stuff,
It's
right?
super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So, given that we were working towards a common goal, it was very easy for me to feel less isolated. And even along with that, going out for lunch is not that hard. Going out and having a coffee every now and then is not that hard. Obviously, again, we're really privileged to be in this position where we can work towards this, and we still have the ability to have have the money to actually go out
Yeah.
and have lunch and have coffee with your friends. Apart from that, I am going to swear by Obsidian. You know, it
Oh,
is
okay, the notes
it's
app.
something
Okay,
called a
yeah,
personal knowledge management software. And the thing is that it is endlessly customizable to the way you want it. And if you know some JavaScript, you can really supercharge it, you know? And my productivity system was basically every day I used to make a note. It was called a daily note. And I used to, every hour by hour, I used to map out what I had to do that day. And I failed. I did not do that. I completely failed at it because it was unrealistic.
Yeah, like 14-hour workday.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could not gauge where my limits were. So then after that, instead of preempting productivity, what I did was I decided to just track where my time went. First 2 weeks was hell. I used to look at it, and then it just used to be 8 hours of red. You know, it was just doom scrolling. Then what I ended up doing was that, okay, so now I got to segregate a system for tracking and for actual application. So when it comes to application, what really matters is the overhead, right? If you have
Simplify
a product,
that, what do you mean?
so yeah, I'm elaborating. So by overhead, what it means is that if your productivity system takes up more time than the actual work it takes,
There's no point.
it's no point, right? Because the activation energy for doing work just increases by orders of magnitude then. So I try to keep it as simple and streamlined as possible. So a lot of it was actually, it didn't have any external um, manifestations. A lot of it was just in my head. So number one, what I did was I just colloquially called it with myself, I called it the two-step framework, right? What I needed was one thing I had to do now and one thing I had to do later. Because if I had more than that, I would get overwhelmed. And if I only had one thing on my mind, I'll be like, I'll do it later.
Only
You know?
30 minutes, bro.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
So the one that you have later kind of starts a sense of urgency within you.
Like, shit, I
and
gotta get
yeah,
this done.
and the one that you have right now gives you clarity on what exactly you have to do. Once I got that locked down, I started figuring out what blocks of time work the best for me. So Pomodoro, the way it's traditionally used, never worked for me
Yeah.
because 5-minute breaks were not cutting it, 10 minutes break were not cutting it. So what I did was I decided, okay, 3 hour work, 1 hour break, you know, and that like once I got that, it really started taking off for me because what ended up happening was that at the start, the 1 hour I just used to goof off. But the thing is that once you get the momentum going, the 1 hour I started going to the gym. The 1 hour I started hanging out with my friends. The 1 hour I started coming back, having chai, having lunch, whatever. You know? And it was like once you get familiar with that, it gets super, super helpful. And it's a self-reinforcing cycle because then I used to track my time on Obsidian where I used to say that, okay, 8 to 9 I worked on math. 9 to 10 I worked on math. 10 to 11 I worked on math because it's a 3 hour block, right? Then what I did was that there's something called Data View, which is the plugin that you can use to query and kind of present data in a very nice way. So I messed around with some metadata and stuff. I'm not going to get too technical with it. And what I ended up happening was that every month I used to have a summary of every day. You know, I used to have how much.
Stats boy, bro.
Yeah, I used to have how much time I worked, how much time I wasted, how much time I spent well, and how much time I just like I apathetically spent. You know, and it was really you see the graph, it's going up, you're like, I got this, you know. It went from like 90 hours of work to 120 hours of work to I max out at like 150. And that was when I didn't have school in session. It was like during summer vacation. So once you have that system in place, it's kind of just self-reinforcing. But the thing is that I'm not gonna play it off as like, oh, I did it once and it just kind of set me up for success forevermore. What ended up happening was that I burnt out. Obviously, I burnt out, and I couldn't get back into the flow at all. And then, whoa, this was during essay writing season that too. It was like peak. My parents are on my back. My college counselors are on my back. Everybody's on my back, you know? And during that time, what really helped was meditation, dude. I would say that is the glue that held my life together back then, even now. Because a lot of this game is distilling signal from noise. You know, there's a lot of noise. There's a Limit
Very
Talks
valid,
guy,
very
you know.
valid.
Oh,
So
check out
much
this!
noise,
yeah.
yeah.
check out this 4.0, 1600 set applicant.
Yeah.
They got rejected from every
University. From that overstimulation, meditation really brought down that baseline level of energy and stimulation a lot for me. So 30 minutes you meditate every day, bro.
Like
super
guided, like
helpful.
on an app. or
No,
something?
I started off
Or you just
guided.
sit like a sadhu, like.
No, I started off guided where I use something called Balance, which is an app my dad had a subscription for.
I
After
think
that,
there's
I
quite a
just
few that do.
yeah,
like, some
Balance, Calm,
Insight
a lot
Timer,
of really good
yeah.
ones. And then after that, I just went into doing this by myself. And okay, you're gonna think I'm a cook now. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you actually, it's first-hand experience. Okay, I am someone super rational. I never believe when somebody says things that sound out of the ordinary. But what happened was that at some point I've been meditating for like 3 weeks straight, right? And then I discovered something called jhana, which is this state of kind of extreme euphoric pleasure, but it's not in the same way that junk, binge eating, or sexual proclivities or anything like that gives you. It's actually on a much more deeper fundamental level. And I was like, nah, this guy's
What
lying.
bullshit.
Huh? This
Propaganda.
is not true. It's propaganda. You know, and I decided, okay, let me just figure out how this works. So the way they said it was that when you're meditating, there is going to be some parts of yourself that have like a tingling sensation, a buzzing sensation. So just observe that and keep that in your head, and it's kind of going to eventually flow over, for a lack of a better word, in your head. And I'm like, you know, might as well try it. Dude, that one day, I still remember it. It was after all my college applications were done. January 13th, 2025, bro. I sat like this, and then literally it hits you like a truck, you know? And after that day, everything just seems so much more joyful, so much more fun. And that's what it is, bro. That's what it's all about. You know, I know you're tuning in here for like college application advice, all of this. But at the end,
I think it's also a lot of the factors around it.
yeah,
Right? It's not like. I think the main goal of this entire podcast is to say that we're not machines. Like
Yeah,
the people that get into
exactly.
these are not like you know.
yeah,
Limit
bro.
Talks, whoever, you
That's
know,
what.
yeah.
It's not about the stats that you see on a paper. I failed so much. I applied to RSI, I got rejected. I applied to IRIS, which is like the precursor to
Oh, yeah,
ICEF
yeah.
twice, I got rejected. I applied to Pramerica Emerging Visionaries, I got rejected.
Outright, yeah.
Literally, again and again and again. I probably sent out like 600 cold emails before I got one positive response. It's like a 0.01% success rate. And the thing is that volume negates luck, you know? And a lot of it is just about the reason people put status symbols on a pedestal is because historically they've been indicators of a good life, you know? If you go to Harvard, you're pretty set, bro. You're gonna have a good life.
Everybody's a Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
there, right?
that's what.
Yeah.
So, what happens as time goes on is that we have these remnants from a time past where credentials used to signify and actually mean something. But in today's world, there's really so much you can do just because of the access to information that you have, you know? And obviously that's incredibly hypocritical coming from me. I'm a very privileged person. I'm sitting in a lawn with three
In a
different
villa,
phones
right,
recording in a villa. And to an extent, whenever I talk about the different paths that are available to people, I always feel kind of out of place, you know, because how can I talk about this? You know, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I have all the facilities in the world, when you have a safety net, it's very easy to talk about all these things from a removed perspective.
Yeah.
But
Especially something like building.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because when you don't have to feed your family, when you don't have to work and you don't have people depending on you, obviously you can say, yo,
Yeah,
let's
Steve
build
Jobs did,
something,
bro,
bro.
yeah.
You can just do
Go to the
things.
Himalayas, get
That's
like,
what I'm
yeah.
saying. So, I would say a lot of it, apart from all the statistics, all the systems, is just about, I know it sounds incredibly cliche, it's about actually the experience of being human. You know, being empathetic, being able to actually understand where other people are coming from. Because without any of that, without the joy in your life, without people that you can actually have meaningful relationships with, nothing else matters, you know? And I would say, don't let the status chasing and the prestige maxing impinge upon your capacity as a human being. You know, if it's stressing you out, if it's burning you out, if it's negatively impacting the way you look at yourself and your relationships with people, don't stop, okay? Because obviously you want to do something with your life. You need to make money. You need to help people out if you're in a less privileged situation. But the thing is that through all of that, don't lose touch with why you're in it. And you're in it to ultimately live a good life. You know? So that's like at the end of it, that's after everything, that's what I've taken away from it, bro. Because I was actually, I know JHU is a great school, but I was super bummed. I thought I would get into somewhere a lot better. And that really hit me. It hit me pretty hard before exams as well. Because when your entire life is centered around
the last 2 years, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
signals of status, when you don't get it, you really think
Like, am I
I'm
worth
good,
it?
bro.
Yeah.
Like, oh, all these people are better than me. All these people,
Yeah.
you get angry at the system. You get angry at everything else. But the thing is that my life is great, dude. My life is actually, for somebody who's living in such a kind of utopian experience, if status can make me go to those depths, it goes to show that it's not gonna get you anywhere. You know, status chasing. You just gotta find what you love, and like ikigai is like a super old concept, but you gotta find what you love or find what you want to do even if you don't love it, and you gotta find ways to stay happy and stay joyful throughout all of that. You know, I think that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Prophetic as hell, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lot. But yeah, I think your journey has always been like one of a kind, right? Even in Greenwood, like
Yeah, you kid.
it's not really something that happens. Like somebody comes in 11th and then just like sets fire to the entire thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you mentioned burnout and stuff. I think before we get
Hmm.
diverge a little bit, right? Before we get into the college application part of that, how did you deal with burnout? Was there?
I think I had a
yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have a very good support system. So my parents, my friends.
I actually even before that, like, I think what is burnout? Like, what did burnout do to you? What did you
Yeah.
feel like?
Burnout to me was always, it felt like the same, you know. It was never the inability to do things. It's just that whatever I did, I felt it was so futile, nothing felt meaningful anymore.
Yeah.
And academics really has a way of doing it to you, especially when you're not optimizing for the academia pathway, when you're saying, I don't need to know any of this.
Yeah.
You know, all of this has no impact in
What
my
is
life.
McLaurin season?
Why am I sitting here and pining and making myself miserable over these things? So in those situations, when I actively couldn't do the things that I wanted to do because of circumstance, that's when burnout hit me the hardest. Because it's not a general lack of desire to do things. It's like, I do not want to study. And when studying is the only thing everybody wants you to do, that effectively equates to I do not want to do anything. And what ends up happening is that if you condition yourself to not doing anything because you don't want to study, even when you can do other things, since you're conditioned to not do anything, you end up procrastinating and doom scrolling. So that's what it looked like for me, you know. When I had the freedom to do things that I really wanted, I used to get after it. I used to be super motivated, super disciplined. I used to wake up, and then that was like a general quality of life improvement, bro. It's like the gym has nothing to do with whether you're working on your
Yeah.
ECs or whether you're studying. But when I was
Just makes
supposed to
you feel
study,
good.
I don't study, I don't go to the gym. When I'm supposed to work on easies, I work on easies and I go to the gym. You know, from a utilitarian perspective, that makes zero sense. But the thing is that it's again about patterns of behavior. So that's what burnout looked like for me from the inside. And then, when it comes to how I managed it, definitely a lot of it was just time based. I thugged it through the exam season, and then I took a few deep breaths, I meditated, I got back to my center,
then head down.
and then I went back to work on my
Yeah.
ECs. So in that way, I actually, even now, I don't think I've stopped being a subject to my circumstances. Like even now, I
What does
think,
that mean?
as in, if you put me in a situation where you're like, IB exams again, you gotta take it again.
You would do it.
I would still procrastinate like hell. I would feel really bad about myself. I would waste a lot of time. Because to me, even now, I find it really hard to work on things that I don't find meaningful. And as much as I try, I can't make myself find studies in the context of the school system very meaningful. You know, the funniest thing, like, I got out of school, I finished all my exams, and then I picked up a probability textbook and I had fun. You know? So it's all a matter of context for me. So the way I think I want to work on it moving forward is that I achieved my goals. You know, I got into a pretty decent university and I have the status now, and I don't intend on doing a master's. So now I think I have the agency to just work on what I think is meaningful to me, and that's acquiring skills that I think can give me leverage in the future, and also building things that I feel like can help a lot of people out. So I would say the prime solution to burnout is putting work into two categories, you know, work that you want to do and work that you don't want to do, and having subroutines for both. That's all.
Okay. Very quickly,
Yeah.
why no masters? It's
Because-
a very Indian push, right, to go for masters and
Yeah.
secure your life kind of.
Definitely. Because, first of all, 22. I'll be 22 when I get out of college, right? And the reason for me to take a master's or a PhD would be if I wanted to explore something at a very deep technical level. I don't have any intention of taking an MBA or something along those lines either. So, the way I look at it, there's kind of like a critical mass to technical proficiency. So once you get to that critical mass, you can make the MVP yourself, you can get enough capital, and you can get people that know better than you to work with you on building things.
Simplify that entire process.
Yeah. For example, I don't know, let's assume I don't know how to code at all, and I want to make a pretty technical AI platform for something. I have no choice but to raise venture capital or spend a bunch of time learning how to do it myself. So now I have that technical know-how, but I only know how to code JavaScript or React or front end. I still don't know enough artificial intelligence to
Or
code the
DevOps
back
or
end.
something.
Yeah. Again, I'm not at the critical mass
Yeah.
point. But if I know how to code front end, if I know how to work with machine learning in production, then I can put that entire platform up by myself and I can get revenue flowing from the scratch itself. And once I reach a certain revenue point, I can actually hire somebody that actually knows a lot about artificial intelligence or something like that to work on the low level processes. For example, if I want to do actual AI research with AI models or something, I would actually have to spend 4 years, like masters plus PhD, before I get to a point where I can spend any time doing meaningful research. On the other hand, if I spend those 4 years with that critical mass of technical proficiency, I have the leverage from a corporation that I've built up over those 4 years. I can hire 10 PhDs to do research 10 times as good. Do you get what I'm saying?
That's it. But I agree with the entire masters thing.
Yeah.
But I disagree with what you said about building, bro. Because I don't think, first of all, solo founders never work. Right? Like I know Y Combinator's now suddenly like they have become like this like prophet of how to build or whatever. But even if you watch like some of their really old lessons, right? I think with Peter Thiel and stuff. I forgot what the episode. I think it's called Competitions for Losers, right? The first thing they say is like we don't select solo founders, right? Because for one, like you said, especially coming out of college, it's very, very rare to actually have that critical mass, right? You might think that you know ML, but it's always better to be a master of something than a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Right? And also, I think in the context of building, it's just like life, right? You need a partner. Like when shit's hitting the fan, like when you're not getting the fund, you're not getting the revenue, it's just not clicking. You can't if it's just you, it's much more likely for you to say, oh, screw it, bro, I'm damn smart, I have this thing on my CV, I'll go work for Microsoft and
Yeah.
right. I think they say, yeah, I mean, vest your equity if you want, but like, it always makes sense to kind of co-found. And I think if you watch the Nikhil Kamath episode with Zepto, right? I think Adit Palicha, he says like at one point, like they were just before they got the Y Combinator on, Zepto was going to be they were like, I mean, they weren't hitting that kind of revenue that they wanted.
PMF.
They were just like, yeah, product market fit, exactly. PMF, wow. Okay, I had to clock that. But yeah, and I think it was ultimately like Kevalya, right, the co-founder that said, it's fine, let's go for it.
Yeah, see, but the thing is that even in that context, I do not want to be the non-technical co-founder.
No,
Like,
I don't think you have to be the non-technical co-founder, but it's not like not. I think the Jobs Wozniak, what do you call it? The
Dynamic.
dimension is very, very,
Rare.
very rare. Yeah, like it doesn't really happen, right? Like think about it. Even like if you're just leeching off the other guy, especially like Jobs was okay, leader of product, and also that time and what he did. Also, he wasn't entirely non-technical, right? Like he did help with product development, which is in some sense technical, even if he's not screwing the thing together.
Bro, I don't know. I think for me, it was just all about leverage, right? Like life is great. Venture capital and startups, the entire thing is a game of leverage all the way up, right? So let's say I don't get these technical skills, right? And I start something right off the bat. Right now I start something. I vibe code something, I start something.
Oh, I don't think vibe coding.
No, like, I know.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
assume.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
even vibe code. I found
Yeah,
something
yeah,
with
yeah.
somebody else. It busts. Okay, it fails. I am left with that on my CV and basically nothing else. Like obviously I have the soft skills, the life experience, but like I've told you before, even if something else goes bust, I still have the technical skills that I learned in order to build that thing. And that I think is invaluable. It's just a personal opinion of mine. Like having something that you can learn that builds upon itself, that compounds over time. And I also think I'm not like a technical hobgoblin. You know, I'm actually decent at technical stuff as well. So I don't mind spending a little bit extra time getting off the ground if that means when I'm flying, I'll also have knowledge of how to fix the airplane. You know?
That makes sense. But I mean, yeah, I think it is valid. Like I'm not advocating for being just a
I know.
dumbass and like okay, I'm gonna gather these people and they're gonna work for me. That's
Yeah,
never gonna happen.
yeah.
Right? You'll get jobs got fired ultimately. Right. But yeah, I mean, I do think when it comes to building, like, team is always better, bro. Because
I agree.
I think the one thing I've discovered is it is never great just ideas alone that
Yeah.
build good products, right?
Great people as
It's great people, right? You need to have great people and a great idea. You could have just like, I think the Facebook example is the same thing, right? I think if you watch The Social Network, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
bro.
Winklevoss,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, they have the entire suit, they're rich boys, whatever. They don't build it at the end of the day,
That's
Right?
because they're not technical, bro.
but because they also don't know the people,
That's true.
right? We had the entire, academics,
Burnout,
ECs,
balance,
burnout,
ECs.
all of that. Finally, the application itself, and I think it boils down to that, and I think people underestimate the value of it. What was your approach to writing essays? How did you come about with things you wanted to write about, and ultimately, were you happy with what you wrote about outside of whether they did well on the application?
Yeah.
or not?
I was super happy with my essays, dude. I was really proud of them, you know? And a lot of people say a lot of different things, but in the end, what I think boils down to like the way it opens up the most possibilities, but with the smallest set of principles is the fact that number one, you choose a format, okay? Format is super important. So you can't write every essay as from a
normal
third
essay,
person
right? Yeah,
perspective or a first person perspective or as a story. You know, spice it up. So for example, Rishi, you had him on before and he said this about me and now I'm here saying it myself. A lot of my why college essays were love letters. That was like, dear UIUC, I see stars in your eyes, something, bro. It was, honestly, maybe it was cheesy. That's why they rejected me, probably, you know? They probably got creeped out. But I liked it. I still think it was a great essay format to go with. Or another one could be for the college essays, it could be kind of like a day in the life vlog. So I wake up now, I go to this class, I work with this professor, I go here, I do these things. And that way they actually get to see from a first person perspective
What you
want to
right,
do
yeah.
there and how deeply you've
Yeah.
actually researched what they're doing.
That's very interesting.
So that's for Y college, you can do that. Then another one that I did was when they had a prompt, as in, what do you expect to get out of it? Or where do you see yourself a few years down the lane? Instead of just saying, I will be a billionaire, I will be this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is about communicating the message without coming off as self-obsessed.
Like I've already done everything.
Yeah,
basically,
you know. So for those essays, what I did was it was a conversation between two hypothetical friends of mine in the future talking about me. It's like, hey, bro, where is Hari at right now?
Yeah.
You know, he's like, he graduated early and he went to Silicon Valley. You know, and then he's like, yeah, you know, do you remember all the taco cookouts we had back in the day with him? And they were like, yeah, dude, he really brought together all these different kids. So one of the core messages throughout all of my essays was the fact that I'm somebody with one foot in both domains, right? I am technical, but I've also worked with nonprofits and
yeah.
people, and I also read a lot of philosophy and stuff. So my shtick was basically like, I'm a builder that's gonna bring together people of all different kinds, you know? And you can really get really, really wild with it. So you start off with the level one, the structure of the essay is just the generic third person storytelling, first person kind of declarative. Actually, I think the worst kind of essay is the declarative essay. I am so and so. I will do so and so. Like everybody says, you gotta illustrate it. That's pretty common advice. You've gotta flesh out your story. So that's the most basic thing. The second part is choosing a unique format, right? So the format is one thing, and the second part is the message. So when you combine these two things, you can actually mix and match many different things many different ways. For example, I can have the message of me bringing together people set through the perspective of, okay, people having a conversation about me. Or I could have a message about how I want to build great things set to the perspective of, let's say, a TED talk somebody is giving 10 years in the future. You know? So with those things, you can actually use the same fundamental principles and ideas, but you can transpose them and frame them in ways that look very different to the reader. So that way you don't look like you're reusing essays between colleges as well. For example, for my UCs, I really went all out, you know? So I had a conversation, there was a lot of conversations in my essays, okay? Because I think Socrates wrote a lot of his dialogue, a lot of philosophy in dialogue, because it's a very good expository medium with which you can write with. So, for example, one of them was a conversation I was having with a voice inside my head, where one voice was super hyper ambitious, and the other one was kind of the other part, like happiness,
calm,
chill down, calm, you know? And for example, another one was, they were asking me, so how will you contribute to campus life? And I basically wrote like a criminal report about an alien invasion at the UC campus, where the aliens were like existential risk or climate catastrophe. And what ended up happening was that it was set from a third perspective, okay? So hopefully it didn't sound too self-obsessed. Like, these group of kids that have been together from the start, that Harihar Prasad brought together, like the business kids, the humanities kids, the eco kids, they're all working together to build things for solutions for the future of humanity. Where I kind of anthropomorphize, I personalize basically the existential risks that we face as a humanity, as aliens. And I put myself as somebody that brings together people from all walks of life to fight these existential risks. And then at the end,
you made yourself Superman, bro. That's crazy.
Kind of, yeah. At the end, the guy who was writing this kind of criminal report, or the kind of, he signed it off by saying that, and I've never seen a flame like this burn so bright in all of my years of teaching at this school. Something like that, bro. So it's like, it makes you stand out, you know, it's interesting. And in the end, I got into all the UCs I applied to except Berkeley and LA, which are the only ones that matter. So you can take it how you want to take it. But I had a lot of fun writing my essays. So in summary, you have the format, you have the message, and you mix and match them for each college. And overarching all of this, you have the overarching theme of who you are trying to come through, right? So my Common App focused on a lot about building, right? So I focus on most of my supplementals about who I am as a person, who I am as a part of the community, stuff like that. So flesh yourself out as a person. That's what I'm saying.
It's a lot, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think I've ever seen somebody be so clear about what their essays were actually about, and kind of the purpose behind it, right? We write a lot without actually knowing
Why?
what we're trying to say, right? We just write for putting.
Chuma,
words
you
on
have to
paper.
write, so you write.
Right,
Prasad.
exactly. We put it for the sake of writing on paper. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a wraps.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
peaceful.
we've gone through pretty much
Basically
everything, right? Anything else? I think this is the one thing that we usually ask people at the end. If you had to give advice to either Harihar starting in 9th, 11th, or somebody out there applying now, right? Whatever stage they may be at, what's the one or two things that you would kind of want to leave them with? That kind of experiential advice, if you get what I mean.
I would say it's very easy to do things that look impressive. It's very easy to do things that look impressive. It's very hard to actually be impressive. And for the thing is that in the society we live in and in the college application process,
Doing
those
things
two
that
things are
impressive, yeah.
functionally the same, right? But I would say if I'm doing it again, I would try to take a lot more from the experiences that I had, because a lot of my technicality comes from last minute ChatGPT questions. I would have learned from scratch. But the thing is that there's so much emphasis on looking impressive that you don't have time to build the rest of the stuff under the iceberg, you know? It's only the 10% on top that you're focusing on. So my advice to me would be, first of all, start earlier, build up a very, very good skill set, and then stop cloud chasing so much. That's like probably the best thing, and obviously stop comparing yourself to other people. Because at the end, the process wise, I don't think I could have done a lot more, you know, unless I actually I got into an accident and my brain got reconfigured or something. Because I pushed myself as hard as I could. I did a lot of stuff. I was off social media. I didn't doom scroll that much. And even with all of that, this is where I ended up. So I would just tell the younger version of me, listen, man,
Chill out.
it's not that deep,
Yeah.
you know. Don't chill out, put your foot on the gas, but learn how to take care of yourself as well. And to everybody out there who's applying, I would tell you that, like all the oldies tell you this all the time, but life really starts after college. I mean, I'm not in college yet. I mean, after the application process, you get a lot free, so much freedom. I finished writing my final essay, 2 a.m. I ordered a McChicken and a vanilla iced coffee, and I watched a Japanese movie, and it was the happiest I have felt in years. So, happiness does not come from achievement. You cannot know what other people went through by looking at them from the outside, and you cannot reasonably expect yourself to do great things if you do not give yourself time to build up the skill set from scratch. That's what I'm gonna leave these people with.
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
That was
Thanks, that was a good session, bro.
Wow.
Yeah.